Hello, and welcome to the stream. Today we're talking about imposter syndrome in digital creators. Today's day 7 of my 30 days of live streams here on this channel, and I'm happy to be here to talk about this topic. It's going to be another faceless stream today. This is my first stream of the day, and I'm supposed to be doing 2 streams a day. So I'm supposed to have done one at 3:40 and then one at 8:40. But let's see how it goes. So like I said, we're talking about imposter syndrome in digital creators. It is a thing. It's definitely a thing. So if you're a creator, if someone who's been trying to build a following online or trying to build a platform online, you probably, you might have been through this yourself, especially in the beginning. I think as time goes on, you start to feel more comfortable in your own skin as a creator. But in the beginning, you might feel like you don't deserve to be up there or out there or known. You might feel like other people are better than you, and you might not even feel that people are going to receive you well. So let me wait. I'm going to wait about 5 minutes to really get into the stream. I'll wait about 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm just going to talk about myself, a little bit about myself. If you don't mind, that's to tell you a bit more about myself. My name is Adina, and I'm actually known on TikTok as D. People sometimes call me that. And so I'm going to say I'm a writer, but essentially I'm a digital entrepreneur, digital business owner. I've built a few digital businesses over the years, and I use written content as a means to build brand awareness. But I started off online as a writer, a content writer, I'd say / blogger. Then branched out into building a company that creates written content for brands on a global scale. And then from there, building a digital product business. And now I actually teach people how to build digital product businesses. And I run a software development company in the UAE. But today, talking about imposter syndrome in digital creators, I'm doing 30 days of live streams. And today's day 7 of the live stream challenge. And today we're talking about imposter syndrome in digital creators and why it emerges and how identity reinforcement reduces it. So if there's anyone listening who really understands what this is and identifies with imposter syndrome, especially if you're a creator yourself and you've experienced this, or you might be experiencing it now, then I will talk about it. And it will be great if anyone who has experienced this or understands what it feels like or how you've managed to overcome imposter syndrome, you can jump in the chat and talk about it. So imposter syndrome, it shows up frequently in digital creators, especially those building products without traditional credentials, titles, or career ladders. Think about it. There are a lot of people creating content about food online and weight loss and skincare and all these kind of, I would say, professions that people would expect, people would expect you to have some kind of qualifications to build a following relating to, say, nutrition or healthcare or weight loss. But now, with the internet and with platforms such as YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, it's permissionless. And so you don't need permission to create content about a specific topic. So some people, when they start off building a creator career, I would say, some creators question whether they deserve their role or fear that others will discover they are not as capable as they appear to be. So this experience doesn't stem from incompetence. It emerges from how the brain evaluates identity risk and social standing in environments defined by visibility and uncertainty. I've done a lot of research about imposter syndrome, and in neuroscience, it talks about imposter syndrome and explains why imposter syndrome appears so strongly, when it comes to, specifically when it comes to creative people, and how reinforcing identity through action reduces its intensity over time. So let's talk about why digital creation triggers imposter syndrome. Digital creation places people in a self-defined role often. So there's no formal promotion into becoming a creator. You decide to build, publish and sell, often without external validation. This lack of structure challenges the brain's need for clear social signals. And the human brain evolved to assess belonging and competence through external markers such as roles, ranks and feedback from authority figures. And traditional workplaces provide these markers, but digital work removes them. So think about it. If you are a healthcare professional, for example, and you're a nutritionist, and you might work in a hospital as a nutritionist, or you might work in a dietary clinic as a nutritionist, and you have a role, a clearly defined role. And so when people ask you, oh, what do? You say, I'm a nutritionist and I work for this company. And they say, okay, how did you start your career as a nutritionist? And you say, I have a degree in nutritional health, okay, or in food science, something like that. I have a degree. And so having that degree, it gives you some kind of social standing, it gives you some credibility. And so you can say, okay, yeah, this is the reason why I'm doing this. But often digital creators go into it. I'm not saying all the time, because there are a lot of digital creators that have professional qualifications, but there are many digital creators that don't have professional qualifications. And so it makes them feel like they don't necessarily belong, because they don't have those external markers to validate what they're doing. So when the brain can't find clear confirmation of status, hi Victor Mitrovic, where do you come from? And why are you here? Are you a creator? Do you want to be a creator? What's your thing? So I'm going to get on with it. I'll respond to whatever you have to say when I take a pause. So, like I said, is when the brain cannot find clear confirmation of status, what it does is it increases self-monitoring. And that increased monitoring often sounds like internal doubt, like self-doubt, comparison, comparing yourself to others, or fear of exposure. And psychologists describe imposter syndrome as a pattern where people discount their achievements and attribute success to chance rather than ability. So digital environments amplify this pattern because outcomes depend on markets rather than managers. Today I'm going to talk about the neuroscience of self-doubt and evaluation. I wouldn't say I'm pretty obsessed with neuroscience. I don't have a formal qualification in neuroscience, but I'm very much interested in neuroscience, especially when it comes to success, manifestation, and even thinking about neuroscience in relation to building digital businesses, there's a lot to think about and there's a lot to learn. You know, self-evaluation relies on several interconnected brain regions. Yeah, so for example, the prefrontal cortex integrates goals, feedback, and expectations. And then the anterior cingulate cortex monitors errors and conflict. And the amygdala responds to perceived social threat. This is a lesson. You should be writing this down. You should have a pen and paper and write this down. When a creator publishes work or prepares to launch a product, for example, these systems activate all together. And so just think about it as this triangle. When a creator publishes work or prepares to launch a product, the systems, they all work together, and the brain evaluates potential judgment and compares performance to internal standards and scans for risk. So without clear benchmarks, these systems can overactivate. So when I'm talking about clear benchmarks, without like a clear without some sort of clarity in relation to credibility. So, for example, if you're talking about nutrition online on YouTube or something like that, and you don't have qualifications, you don't have some kind of accolade to prove that you are someone who has the ability to talk about something like this, or the credentials to talk about something like this, then you start to, your brain goes into overactivity and you start thinking. Hi, Jackie, how are you? Where are you from? Are you a content creator? Do you want to be a content creator? What's your thing? My name is Adina, and I am a digital business owner, writer and software developer. England. Okay, hi. Hello, fellow English woman. Where in England are you from? I don't live in England anymore, but I was born and raised in South London. It's really nice to see English people sometimes, or to see English people on the stream. So where in England are you from? Or where are you based in England? Okay, Jackie, that's fine. Nice to see you. Talk to you soon. Okay, so let's get back into this. Neuroscience research shows that perceived social evaluation triggers similar brain responses to physical threat. That's actually quite interesting. It's interesting, actually, because it reminds me of something. When I was in school, I was told to read a poem, or it was either a poem or a passage from a book called, it was by Khalil Gibran, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, or Khalil Gibran. And my teacher noticed that I really liked the book because I read it and I kept reading it over and over again. And so I had already read it. By the time we were starting school for the new term, I had already read the book. And so I knew quite a bit about it, but I still had this self-doubt, imposter syndrome, I would say. And he said to me, you seem to know a lot about the book. Let's allow you to read this in my next assembly for some of the younger kids. And I didn't want to do it. I was terrified. And I remember the day of that particular assembly, I was absolutely terrified, and it felt like I was running from a bear. That's how it felt like. I felt so much anxiety, and I was just in total fight or flight mode. My heart was pounding. I wanted to run as fast as I could. And And when I look back on that, I feel like that feeling of self-doubt and inadequacy, the imposter syndrome, it actually felt as scary as physical threat. It really did. It really did. It doesn't mean that your work, with this, it doesn't mean that your work is dangerous. It means that the brain treats uncertainty around social standing seriously. So imposter syndrome reflects this heightened vigilance rather than a lack of capability. And often, more skill doesn't solve imposter syndrome. Many creators expect imposter feelings to fade once they gain more knowledge or experience, but research has actually shown that the opposite is to be true. So high performers often report imposter syndrome at equal or higher rates than beginners. And this pattern occurs because imposter syndrome relates to identity alignment rather than competence. So when behavior outpaces identity, the brain struggles to reconcile the two. So you may act as a creator while still identifying as someone who consumes, studies, or prepares. So the brain seeks coherence. So when identity lags behind behavior, tension arises, and that tension often manifests itself as self-doubt rather than confidence. Closing this gap requires identity reinforcement, not perfection. And so, essentially, it's not about just trying to acquire more skills and perfecting. It's about identity reinforcement, so reinforcing your identity as that particular thing. So it means you just have to do more of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to acquire more skills, as in to go and do more, gain more qualifications or anything like that. And that's why perfectionists, people that are perfectionists, they're never happy. Because they're constantly striving for perfection, but they still feel inadequate. They still feel like they don't belong, even though they're absolutely amazing, like their work is amazing, but they still feel like there's something that they need to do better, even though their work is pretty much close to perfect. This reminds me of when I was in school. I was in high school, and English was my favourite subject. And I used to cry, real tears, when I would hand in my work, because I was terrified of handing it in. I'd be shaking because I was like, I do not want to get a B. I need to get an A plus. And so I would be going through, and that time we didn't used to type our essays out. We would write everything out by hand. Sometimes I would tear the whole paper, like I would tear all the pages out. I've written an essay of 1,000 words and I would tear all the paper out because I felt like I wasn't worthy. I felt like the work wasn't perfect enough. And so even though I had perfected my skill of writing, I still didn't feel confident in what I was doing. Even though I had perfected my skill, every single essay I did, majority of the time I would get an A star. Or, 100%, 99%. And I was always terrified that I was going to get less than what I felt like I wanted. And so this idea of, the brain seeks coherence. When identity lags behind behavior, tension arises. That tension often manifests itself as self-doubt rather than confidence. So closing this gap requires identity and reinforcement, not perfection. This is why I talk about identity so much when it comes to manifestation and manifesting money and building a digital business, manifesting your $100,000 a month digital business. I talk about identity shifting and how important identity shifting is in building a business, because you have to shift into the identity of that person that makes $10,000 a month, that makes $20,000 a month or $30,000 a month. You cannot remain in the same identity as someone who makes $1,000 a month and then expect to make more. And so if you want to overcome imposter syndrome, I mean, you might never overcome it, to be honest. It seems to always crop its ugly head whenever you try something new. But if you want to overcome it in your current field or whatever you're doing right now as a creator, you just need to keep reinforcing that identity. And a way of doing that is to do as much networking as possible. Another really powerful way of doing that is if you can't get out there physically to network, go on do as many live streams as possible and connect with as many people as possible. Build a community. And when you do that, you get an opportunity to tell people what you do. Oh, I am a content creator. There's a guy on here called, I think his name is Ben, or Mark, I think it's Ben Moss or Ross. Don't quote me on that, but he's a British content creator and real estate business person, and or business owner, and he lives in the UAE. He lives in Ras Al Khaimah in the UAE, and he has made a point of going live every single day on TikTok. Without fail, he's live on TikTok, and he's built this community. People love him, and he has identified himself as an influencer. This is what he calls himself. But in the beginning, he was just sort of saying, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur." But now he's identified as an influencer, and I've noticed how his confidence has increased over time, from when I first started watching him to now. So, one of the best ways of overcoming imposter syndrome is to just get out there as much as possible and network as a creator. Engage with other creators, not just leaving comments and all of that, but creating situations where you have to talk to people. I know it's tough if you're someone who struggles with anxiety and social anxiety and all this kind of thing. You just need to get out there and talk to people as much as you possibly can. There's something called rejection therapy that's really powerful. What you do is you ask people something, a question, and that question is most likely going to give you a no answer. So you would go out there and you would say something like, "Can I take over your shop for one day?" This is just an example. And most likely the person is going to say no. But the more no's you hear, actually, people think that no's are bad. But actually, when you hear no, what it does is it reinforces your confidence in a way, because especially when you keep on doing it, you realize that nothing is really that scary. They say no, and then what happens? Do you die? Most likely you're not going to die. You go on to the next person and ask them another question. And so often all of these weird scenarios are just going on in our heads, but they're not real. We just make up a lot of things in our brains before things even happen. So with imposter syndrome, you can overthink before you even post anything. Oh my God, people are going to laugh, people are going to leave bad comments. And the thing is, people might leave bad comments, but so what? I mean, the thing about bad comments is that, or negative comments is, how do you handle them? Do you spend time engaging with that person and just going back and forth, or you just delete and block? That's it. It's different if the comment has constructive criticism in it, or where it's like the content you're creating requires some kind of debate, and that's different. Then people will come in and be like, "No, I don't agree with this," and then it's healthy debate. But those people that are just trolls that just come in and just say random things for the sake of it, just nasty things for the sake of it, those people, delete them and block them. Simple as that. It's not difficult. You see, so even with negative comments, what happens? Do you die after you've read a negative comment about yourself? No, you just move on. And as time goes on, you develop tougher skin, thicker skin, and you just keep going, and you keep reinforcing that identity of yourself as being a creator. Let's talk about comparison and how it intensifies imposter thoughts. Psychology research on social comparison, it shows that upward comparison often reduces self-evaluation accuracy. So you compare drafts to polished launches, early versions to refined systems, And this mismatch reinforces the belief that others belong while you remain an outsider. Let me explain this in layman's terms. So often, especially when you first start out on social media, you go on social media and you will look at someone's content, and that person maybe has 100,000 followers, and you look at their content and you're like, oh, I'm scared to put anything out there because this person's content is better than mine. They might have the same topic that you're talking about, same niche. Oh no, I don't want to create content because my content is nowhere near as good as this person. Not realizing that this person has been banging out content for the past 5 years daily. No breaks. The person's been doing this for years. And then you're comparing yourself to that person, and that person has been doing it for so long, has had so many reps, so much experience, so many hours of work put in, that you as a new creator, you're coming and you're looking at that person and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't do this, and you quit because you see other people seemingly doing better than you. So stop. One thing that you need to do if you are going through that whole cycle of imposter syndrome is you need to shift your attention from comparison to evidence of behaviour. And what that essentially means is that instead of comparing yourself to other people, you need to look at what you are going to do or what you are doing. Focus on yourself and what you're doing. And so, okay, this person has been there for a while, they've got 100,000 followers. Okay, brilliant, that's amazing. Why don't you take some inspiration from that person? And why don't you take some inspiration from that person? And why don't you measure your input? So measure what you are putting in. So say, okay, I am going to do a challenge and I'm going to post every day for 30 days, non-stop, without a break. I'm going to do it daily. There's not going to be any stopping me. And when you've completed that 30 days, you're going to look back on the 30 days and you're going to say, okay, I managed to achieve that. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be focusing on the evidence, as in, okay, I did this. I managed to post for 30 days straight. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions in relation to building a digital business, in relation to identity shifting? Does anyone have anything to say in relation to being a digital creator or being a creator and imposter syndrome, and how you might have managed to overcome it? Before I go into identity reinforcement and how it changes, identity of reinforcement changes and how the brain interprets evidence. I want to talk about that next, but I want to give anyone who is watching the opportunity to talk, if you want to, not talk, but type something out in the chat, and if you have anything to say about imposter syndrome or being a content creator, or even building a business overall, because imposter syndrome isn't just about being a digital creator. Like, you can have imposter syndrome in any walk of life. And so even in a job, like a normal 9 to 5. So I'm going to wait a bit. I want this stream to be 40 minutes at max, because I need to go on another stream, on another channel, and then I'll come back to this channel and do one more stream before I go to sleep, because my goal is 2 streams a day for this particular challenge, 2 streams a day on this channel. So if anyone has anything to say in relation to this topic or in relation to building a digital business, if you have any questions, then definitely drop those in the chat. I've been building digital product businesses for the past 5 years, and I've been building blogs and creating written content for brands and my own blogs for the past 10 years. So I do have a bit of experience building online businesses and building content-driven businesses, specifically with written content. So even though I would say I'm not an expert with video content, I am going to say I'm an expert in building digital businesses using written content. So if you have any questions relating to that, then definitely let me know. Also, I have a few links in my bio. One is for my remote tasks club, and the other one is for my digital abundance challenge. The remote tasks club is for anyone who wants to build a digital income but don't want to search for work online and do all the selling and all of that. You can actually start making money by signing up to a 1-year membership. In the description, in the bio, you will see the remote tasks club. Okay, so no one has anything to say, so I'm gonna get on with it. So identity reinforcement, it works by aligning self-perception with repeated action. This is very simple. To reinforce your identity, you need to align self-perception with repeated action. So one of the things that is very important is to build your self-concept. And how I do that is to take repeated action, inspired action, and I like to say my affirmations every single day without fail. So I affirm something very specific in relation to self-concept. So if you are building a digital creator career, you can say something like, I am a successful content creator. I'm a successful content creator. I'm a successful content creator. You can keep saying that until you're blue in the face. And that's going to help you with your self-concept as a creator anyway. And then you want to take repeated action. And what is that repeated action? Create content, publish it, post it. It's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. I think people overcomplicate content creation because they might see people that are creating content with high-end cameras and all the different things. But I tell you what, the way content creation is right now, you do not have to do all of that. I'm not saying that it isn't lovely to see really high quality content and all of that, but you don't actually have to produce content like that, especially if you're on platforms like TikTok or you're doing YouTube Shorts or Reels. You do not have to do that. You just need a phone, maybe a microphone, one of those mini mics, and you just get on with it. You don't even need to have a niche. You know, for me, I need to separate my content into different segments. So that's the reason why I have multiple channels, because I find that when I throw everything into one place, it makes me feel really anxious. Seeing like a page that has got food plus like manifestation stuff and skincare and clothes and I got history and all different things. I can't lump all my content into one page. I just don't like it. I like things to be separate. So I have multiple Medium accounts. I have multiple YouTube accounts. I have multiple TikTok accounts. And I used to do the same thing with Instagram, which I'm not on there anymore. But just publish it, post, create content, post, talk about it. And right now with ChatGPT, my goodness, if you're struggling to post content, then I don't know what you're doing. ChatGPT, all you need to do is go on there and say, right, I'm a content creator. I want to create content about manifestation. Give me 50 video titles that I can do that would attract my preferred target audience. What problems do people that are interested in manifestation have, and what should I talk about? It is not difficult. Turn your phone on and talk. I know some people are really shy and they don't want to show their faces. That's all well and good. But if you are okay to show your face, get on with it. And even if you don't want to show your face, you can do audio content. People still like listening to audio content. People still like listening to Yeah, and so self-perception theory explains this process. So the brain infers identity from observable action. So each time you create, revise, publish, or sell, you provide data that supports the identity of a digital creator. That's the reason why I love content creation and manifestation. I like to combine the two. I'll tell you why. Because if you're a content creator, guess what? You are a master manifester. Whether you like it or not, you are a master manifester. Why? Because you're creating your reality as you go along every single day. Each day you're creating content, you're putting content out there. What's happening? You're creating your reality. You are reinforcing your identity as a creator every single time you put something out there. So, like I said, each time you create, revise, publish, or sell, you provide data that supports the identity of a digital creator. And over time, this evidence accumulates. The brain no longer needs to question legitimacy because behavior confirms it. So this is how you're going to overcome imposter syndrome. You need to just keep creating. You need to keep doing. Because like I said, each time you create, I'm going to say this again, revise, publish, or sell, you provide data that supports the identity of a digital creator. Okay, so that's going to help you over time to overcome imposter syndrome. And what happens is the evidence accumulates over time and the brain no longer needs to question legitimacy because behavior confirms it. So identity reinforcement reduces imposter syndrome by stabilizing internal narratives rather than arguing with them. Love it. Here are some practical steps to reduce imposter syndrome through identity reinforcement. I'm going to give you some practical steps. You can actively support this shift with deliberate practices. So describe yourself according to what you do. This is what I was saying to you, that if you, in order to reinforce your identity, you want to be networking as much as possible and telling people what you do. So you want to describe yourself according to what you do, not what you aspire to become. For example, say I build digital tools for productivity rather than I am learning how to start. You see? I remember back in the day I used to go to art galleries and events and stuff with my sister. She's an artist. And I remember her just telling people, I'm an artist, I'm an artist, I'm an artist, I'm an artist. I heard that word so many times, or that phrase so many times, it started to give me a headache. I'm like, why does she keep saying that when she's not really like professional? That's what I always used to think, because I was kind of thinking in a negative way, like not in a way of like I was hating on my sister or anything like that, but I always used to be like, well, you're not an artist yet, because in my mind I'm seeing it like an artist is someone who has exhibitions, there's someone who sells art and all of that, but she wasn't at that time selling anything. And so I always used to kind of be like, why she keeps saying that? But what she was doing is she was reinforcing her identity as an artist, which is very powerful, and it worked because she's a very well-known artist now in the UK. So step 2 is to track, and so I'm going to give you an exercise to do. When you have time, or after this stream, you want to sit down and you want to write down a very clear description of what you do, very clear, and it needs to just be a short paragraph explaining exactly what you do. So if someone asks you a question, you don't go, I don't know, or I'm an aspiring this and I'm an aspiring that. No, you're going to say, I'm a content creator. I create content about lifestyle, health and lifestyle, or health and wellness. I'm a content creator. I create content about building AI businesses. I'm a content creator. I create content about building digital product businesses. I'm a content creator. I create content about building digital product businesses with strategy and identity shifting. Or I'm a content creator and I teach people how to build digital product businesses using mindset training and identity shifting. It is very simple. And for me, I can say that as a creator, I create content about building digital businesses and mindset training and identity shifting. Okay. But I'm also a software developer and a writer, and I have other digital businesses. But if someone wants to ask me a question relating to content creation and me being a creator, I'm going to say, I create content about this thing. And it's going to be building digital product businesses and mindset training and identity shifting. And if people ask me what that is, it's quite simple. Well, I build digital product businesses and I tell people how to do it using clear strategy and mindset training. And they say, oh, give me an example of what that actually means. I'll say one of my methods is to help people to shift their identity to the person that is making $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month or whatever amount you choose. Step 2 is to track behavioural evidence. Keep a simple record of creation actions, log drafts completed, pages written, products shipped, or updates released. This record provides objective data that counters emotional doubt. Step 3 is to create learning from legitimacy. Treat learning as part of the role. Digital creators refine skills continuously. Ongoing learning signals professionalism, not inadequacy. Step 4 is to reduce outcome-focused comparison. So compare consistency rather than visibility. Measure how often you show up rather than how others perform publicly. And step 5 is to normalize iteration. So view early versions as expected steps, and iteration reflects engagement, improvement, rather than failure. I have a few more points. I've gone over my 40-minute target for this stream, but I'm going to just talk about a realistic example from digital product creation. So consider a writer building a paid guide, for example. Each revision feels like proof that the guide lacks value, and the writer delays release while comparing the work to established creators. I think in a way it can be quite normal to compare yourself, but at the same time, you waste a lot of time and energy by looking at what someone else is doing instead of saying, right, I'm going to just keep going and moving along my path. When the writer shifts focus to identity reinforcement, behaviour changes. The goal becomes releasing version 1 rather than achieving perfection. So the act of publishing provides evidence of being a creator. So over time, releasing updates feels routine. So when I released my first successful e-guide, which was called the Blog Accelerator, it was pretty bad in my opinion when I look back. The cover was appalling, and I wasn't really that happy with it, but I felt like I needed to get it out there because I knew that if I continued to keep making changes, I wasn't going to put it out there. So after about a week, I made a significant amount of money from it. It was about $3,000 or $4,000 in 1 week from that book. And so I decided that I was going to tweak the cover after a week. And I really feel like me putting the book out there at the time really helped to reinforce my identity as a creator, because people would ask me, oh, so what have you put out there? And I would say, oh, I have a book out at the moment, and it's on this platform, and I'd give them the link, and they would automatically say, oh, wow, that's great, that's amazing. And it made me feel like I was really doing the thing, and I wasn't just being like fake. I wasn't just impersonating a creator. I really was a creator. You know, doubt decreases because the brain recognizes consistent action. So consistency is so important. Repetition is so important. When I talk about manifestation, manifesting money, manifesting a successful digital business, repetition is so key. Whether it be repeating affirmations, whether it be doing the actual thing. You know, my formula for building anything is to repeat, in terms of the content I'm producing, in terms of the products that I'm putting out, and in terms of affirming that my business is successful regardless, no matter what people are saying or no matter what voices I'm hearing in my head. Confidence follows identity alignment, not the other way around. This is why reassurance rarely works on its own. External reassurance offers temporary relief, but rarely changes imposter patterns. So the brain discounts praise when internal evidence feels weak. So neuroscience research shows that self-efficacy strengthens through mastery experiences rather than verbal affirmation. So repeated action builds neural pathways associated with competence and control. So identity reinforcement works because it supplies the brain with evidence it trusts. So when we're talking about affirmations, we're not necessarily talking about the affirmations that you just keep saying to yourself and repeating to yourself. We're actually referring to people constantly reassuring you and telling you, well done, praising you and all of that. That works for us, a short period of time is sort of short-term validation in all of that. But you need to identify as that person who is, a creator. And you need to give yourself that validation and not be concerned about external validation. That's the reason why I remember one time Michael Jackson said that he doesn't keep awards in his house because he feels like awards make him relax too much, because he would be using the awards as a kind of benchmark for himself. And so he sort of thinks, well, okay, that's the thing that I've been working towards and I've achieved it now. But what he said, what made him keep going was trying to be better than the last thing and doing the thing, dancing and singing continuously, repeating, not, oh, I've got this award and so that's it. That's what's going to validate me. That's what's going to reinforce my identity as being a performer. This is how imposter syndrome softens over time. As identity stabilizes, what happens is the brain reduces self-monitoring. Attention shifts from self-evaluation to problem-solving instead. And creative energy increases because mental resources redirect away from threat detection, and imposter thoughts may still appear, but they lose urgency. So the creator no longer interprets them as signals of exposure. And they become background noise rather than barriers. So this shift reflects adaptation and not personality change. Here are some key takeaways. Imposter syndrome emerges in digital creators because the brain seeks clear signals of legitimacy in environments defined by autonomy and uncertainty. So skill alone does not resolve this tension because imposter syndrome reflects identity mismatch rather than ability. So identity reinforcement reduces imposter syndrome by aligning behavior with self-perception. I really like this idea of identity reinforcement reducing imposter syndrome by aligning behavior with self-perception. So your actions help to reinforce your identity, which in turn reduces imposter syndrome. And consistent creation, evidence tracking, and process-focused evaluation provide the brain with proof of legitimacy. So over time, actions stabilize in your identity, meaning you just need to just keep taking action. I know it can be tough when you feel inadequate in some way or your confidence isn't very high, but you need to push through it. Self-doubt loosens its grip and digital creators move forward with grounded confidence, rooted in what they do, not what they fear. I really hope you've taken something valuable from this stream. And I'll be back tomorrow to do a work with me stream. I'm going to do a 10,000 word challenge tomorrow. It's just going to be a one-day thing, and I'm going to be streaming that 10,000 word challenge. And yeah, I haven't done a 10,000 word challenge in a while where I write 10,000 words in a day. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. And right now it's 8:31 p.m. Gulf Standard Time, and I plan to come back on here for a second stream before I sleep. So thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the likes that I've saw today, and for the people that did come through and say hi, Victor and Jackie. I appreciate it. I hope to see you again soon on the stream. And take care. Peace. Also, you can check out any of the links that are in the description once this video goes up. And also check out links that are up in bio.